Yo, what's going on, guys? Specie here. Today we're looking at Wang ID's control Skellige. Before I start, might have noticed a few less videos than usual recently. Just been a bit down in the dumps for the last week or so, not being as productive as potentially I should have been. But hopefully I can keep my spirits up just long enough for this video. I'm all good. It's just that lockdown vibes, not really socializing. I'm back in full-time work in a couple of weeks. I think that routine is going to be what I need. So, a big payoff for this Blaze of Glory. It's very control heavy. So if you compare it to Patricidal Fury, this deck has like more points on your side of the board, but less control options, and it maybe is slightly more predictable. Whereas this list is just full on control. You use your lead ability to move a Skellige unit from your deck to your graveyard and then damage by that power. So it's very similar to Vicious Slash or Adder, and our main target for that is going to be Jutta. So we're going to move Jutta from our deck, so you want to mulligan her at all times, and deal 12 up to 12 damage. Then what you can do is you can use Sigdriffers right that same turn, so as your finisher this often is, and you can move Jutta from your graveyard and summon her to the field, which means that she's not going to do this deploy of damage herself, so she comes in at 12 points, which is really nice. There's also Skel, who is like another semi-decent target for this Sigdriffers right, and another card that sort of synergizes really nicely with these cards is the man Hjalmar, who is going to banish a card from your graveyard and damage an enemy unit by its power. So super control heavy cards with your lead ability and Hjalmar. You've got two ways of really punishing tool units before they get out of control. So like cards like Saul, cards like Sea Jackal. So we're not using the Morkvarg, but we have these other ways of dealing with them sort of before they get to be huge cards. You're dealing with them slightly earlier, which can be really useful in earlier rounds. This deck is really good if you have last say in a lot of matchups. It's also really good against Shiru, or at least pretty decent against Shiru, which honestly is pretty important in today's meta because everyone's cottoned on that Shiru is kind of broken and everyone is playing Shiru. So yeah, we are going to be playing Devotion. Now, a big Devotion payoff for Skellige is that you get to use Skjordal. Harold also in his third evolution, and also War of Clans is a pretty decent card. We're using all three of those, but I think this card's the biggest payoff. Like, this card is just incredibly good. 5 deal 5 for 8 provisions. Obviously the downside being in round 1 and round 2, particularly round 1 he's just 3 deal 3, but in round 3 this is just an absolutely unbelievable card that would just see play in any deck if his devotion thing wasn't a thing, and he was a neutral card. It would be in every single deck in the game. So really big good reason to play Devotion, and obviously Harold's third form is pretty good in this War of Clans. So War of Clans, your main target for is going to be this Onquate Warrior. Can't speak very well. It's going to be this Oncrate Warrior, and he is going to be giving 3 bleeding, but when played from your graveyard is going to be dealing 3 damage, and we're using 2 of those, so you do need to be slightly careful because we are using a couple of other warriors in at 4 provisions, but you definitely need to be aware of your graveyard and not break your Harold. So Harold can play any bronze warrior, whereas this War of Clans is just 4 provision warriors, and I'm pretty sure it's just the invaders and just the Oncrate warriors. Still using the nerfed Stunning Blows ×2. It's still one of the best removal cards in the game for 4 provisions. It can deal 6 damage, and it can deal with these really popular cards like Herkia, who we are using. We're using Herkia, we're using Donna, we're obviously using Scal, and we're using Gremist. Probably some of the best 7 provision cards in the game belong to Skellige. Gremist, not as amazing, but just really important to have this Purifier, because if you imagine our opponent plays a defender with a shield or something, last thing we want to be doing is using our Blaze of Glory on the defender. We want to deal with what's behind the defender. So Gremist is just really nice way of dealing with the defender while keeping our removal tools for other things. If we just look at like the other bronze warriors that we're going to be using, the Drummond Berserker is just an absolutely amazing card, and it seems like a waste not to use them. But in this particular list, we're not. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure I mentioned it. This is Wang ID's control Skellige list from the most recent top 16 qualifiers. So he is a professional player. It's not my deck. I take 0 credit for it. Wanged or Wang ID is one of the world's many mysteries. I'm honestly not sure which it is. And the Oncrate Raiders do make an appearance in this one. So they're your Harold targets, your best one. Obviously the invaders are going to be 7, and this is going to be dealing 3. Just make sure you're not bricking your War of Clans. Speaking of bricks, there is one other thing we need to be very, very careful of, and that is our raiding fleet that we're using. I should probably mention that we are using Vabiorn, and we are also using Blood Eagle to no one's surprise. So Blood Eagle did of course get nerfed recently by 1 provision, but it's still just an amazing card. You can summon any warrior from your deck, so Hjalmar, Harold. You might want to summon Jutta, but you don't. That's obviously your leader target. And then if you don't have like the 2 Death Blow, you can still summon, or the Bloodthirst, you can still summon cards like Scowl, Grimace, Donna. They're definitely worth considering sometimes to actually mulligan some of these cards away, like Donna and Scowl, because they can give your Blood Eagle that little bit of extra tempo that you might want, which gives you a lot of reach. Let's say I'm going second, and I've got Scowl in my deck. It means I know I've got 12 reach at all times with Blood Eagle into Scowl, which means if I can stay within 11 points of my opponent, they're not going to be able to pass. Or if they do pass, I'll be able to take that round without really investing too much. So that's something you really want to look out for, particularly when going second, is maybe mulliganing this Scowl. Donna would also give you 11 reach if you've got this Bloodthirst as well. So just look out for that. Obviously, you've got more reach potentially with some of these other cards, but in round 1, Hjalmar, Harold, Jutta, Skjordal, not really cards you're going to be looking for, but Vabiorn is a really nice option to have as well that you can pull off Blood Eagle. So Vabiorn, of course, getting reworked recently, you can pull any raid card with him, which includes the Blood Eagle, it includes the Stunning Blows, the War of Clans, and also this Raiding Fleet. Raiding Fleet just being an amazing card that is going to thin your deck by 1, putting an engine on the board and giving bleeding. So the cards we're looking to be pulling off that, obviously you could go for the Dimon light long ships. They're mainly paired with cards like Wild Boar, whereas we're just using the solid value on Create Long Ships. Just an amazing card. Demands an answer, otherwise they're going to get continuous value the longer the round goes on. So definitely one thing you need to look out for is brick in your hand, because it's easily done. Cards like Skjordal, really bad round 1. Hjalmar, Harold, not good round 1. Obviously Jutta you're not going to want to play in your hand, she's a free mulligan. Sigdrifa sucks in round 1. War of Clans sucks in round 1. And then obviously you've got things to look out for, like not bricking your Raiding Fleet. You've got 2 targets for that. You want to make sure you're setting up your graveyard for Harold and for your War of Clans. So lots of things to look out for sure. You also don't want to have too much removal, but you don't want to have too little removal. So definitely something I found when playing this deck is mulligans can be quite tricky for sure. We are also using the Totem. This is a nice proactive card that is especially good in the mirror matchup. So if you're in a mirror matchup, what you want to do is usually not trigger this, because then cards like Harold, cards like Hercule, their random damage pings are going to hit into these fanatics, which are then eventually going to transform. So you're essentially sponging their damage, and then not getting value off those random damage pings. Seems as though we've got 6 provisions spare, and that is going to be the Decoction. This is the only alchemy card. You cannot chew to this card, but that is also in fact Sigdrifa is also an alchemy card. So these 2 cards are going to allow you to use Gremist again. Not something that's often too useful, but definitely worth looking out for. Obviously Giga Scorpion, just a great way of dealing with other units. So lots of control with your Stunning Blows, your Raiders, your Warriors from Graveyard. So one combo you can do is you could go, let's say you've got Bloodthirst 3, you could go Vabiorn into Blood Eagle, which is going to deal 2 damage. And if you've got, oh, sorry, ignore me. You could go Blood Eagle into Vabiorn, and let's say you've got 3 Bloodthirst. You could target, let's say, like a 7 strength unit, so that will put it down at 5. And then you could play Vabiorn into War of Clans, which is going to do 2 damage, which would put it down to 3, into On Great Warrior, which would kill it. So there's the potential of killing 7 strength units with this combo, 6 strength units with this. This is a very difficult combo to set up, though. You need Bloodthirst 3. But yeah, let's get into a game. I do think it's quite a high skill cap deck. I did pretty well with it out placements, finishing like 2,470 after 25 games. Pretty sure I've just been playing absolutely terribly though, so I've knocked it down. I've knocked all my factions down pretty horrifically. Not been at peak performance. I'm still sort of pushing for top 64, but I'm starting to think maybe I don't go for it. As I say, I've been a little bit down in the dumps last few days, and I also think that's had an impact, unfortunately, on my Gwent gameplay as well, which has probably made me feel slightly more triggered because I've not been streaming and producing as much content. But it's definitely not the game, it's definitely me. And I was on stream a couple of times getting a bit mad, and I was like, yeah, this is not the look. So, in terms of mulligans, Obviously, mentioned already this raiding fleet. We've got one target for it. It's really nice. I'm going first as well. It's important to know. So this is a nice card to lead with. As I mentioned, I think Scow is a really nice card to pull off this Blood Eagle round 1. So I'm actually going to mulligan him for that tempo. Double on Crate Warrior is a little bit slow for my liking. I think you just want one. Obviously, I really don't want to brick this, right? I don't love this card in my hand either, though. But it seems way too risky to risk another mulligan, right? So I'm going to keep this. There's also Jutta Sigdriffer. Definitely already said it, like a downside of this deck is your round 1 hands can be super awkward. In terms of this matchup as well, I would say that Patricidal Fury is favoured. So what we could really do with doing is winning round 1. If we can achieve that. And this again is like a little bit of an issue. Okay, like what do I really do here? I think it's probably the Raider. It puts 2 engines down on my side of the board, but also like applies like a little bit of control. He can't kill both of these in the same turn, right? So this is normally a card you don't want to play round 1. Because it's much better round 2, round 3 because of the veteran tag. But it is what it is. We've got it. Obviously, we can replay it from the graveyard. And here's the investment of the totem. As I was saying, a pretty good card to have access to in round 1. In the mirror matchup. Round 1, it's a very big investment by my opponent. And he's essentially not really, or they're essentially not letting me really do too much here. Obviously, now I'm in a position where I can pass. My opponent's not going to want to use this until when I pass, but I would say that this card investment means it's going to be very difficult for us to win this one for sure. If we can get Death Blow on something, then I could call potentially in Vabiorn into like a Stunning Blow, which could shut this down quite significantly. And I mean, like, seems like the most logical play for us to now make. Then again, what I'm just going to do here is I'm going to use Herkia, and I'm actually just going to use her damage like that. Reason being is her random damage pings are just going to hit in here. So Herkia just paying for a 7-point card, but with 3 removal, pretty solid. Still get access to this raiding fleet. Obviously, the decoction. I'd like to get this card down, but we're actually looking pretty decent. Obviously, this totem's still giving us a pretty good threat, but the long ship put in a lot of work just there. Okay, so this just seems like a nice time to play this. Let's still try and, you know, apply a decent amount of pressure. Let's play the raiding fleet, our first real target we've had for it. It's thinning as well, our deck. So this is just applying a lot of pressure. Hopefully we can win the round, but at least just force some decent cards out. I'd like to play this. It's a pretty slow card. Also, like the Blood Eagle makes a lot of sense to play maybe into, again, Scowl, because that's going to develop our graveyard and give us a nice Hjalmar target in future rounds, right? So the Champion's Charge comes in. Again, I just don't really have any nice plays to make here, particularly. We could just go for a Scowl, as I've mentioned a few times. Nothing's massively wrong with that, but then what am I going to do with this Raiders? I could obviously sink in. Decoction seems a bit sketchy. Seems like a bit of a waste of a decoction. But definitely a bit of a dilemma here for us. I obviously don't want to use like a... Maybe I'm just decoctioning this. It's still playing for 6 points essentially, right? It lets us leave this Raider floating on the board. What we want to make sure we don't do is lose on even, right? But I feel like our opponent's just not committed enough for us to be happy to pass just yet. Like, they're wanting us to pass, right? They're playing awkwardly. They're making life difficult with this totem. We've still got access to this Blood Eagle. And now that this Bear Abomination is flipped, we can potentially play this Warrior, although it's very slow. So maybe we don't want to do that. Maybe we're just looking at like Blood Eagling and passing, right? But we've still got this Raider, we've still got this long ship applying pressure on his side of the board or their side of the board. Bad habit to refer to them as his. Herky coming down, I would imagine, does the same thing as we did. Wow. So what this is just allowing me to do is use my Raider here, damage Herky, and then I can kill it with Blood Eagle. So the question I have, though, is if we call in one of these big cards, like a Vabiorn, or if we just go with something like Donna or Scowl. And again, like, I don't want to be calling Jutta in or anything like that. I definitely just want to answer this straight away, though, right? And that's what the Raider can do. I think, to be honest, again, I could go Vabuon and, like, Stunning Blow, but it doesn't really offer me that much at this point. I think it's just Scout. I think I'm kind of happy with this. I want this card in my graveyard anyway. And this seems like a really nice time for us to pass. We're 15 points ahead. I obviously could play this Warrior down here. It's pretty slow, but it's definitely an option. This is also just a card, though, assuming my opponent's going to dry pass, that we could just play down on the dry pass. And we've really not invested that much. We've both played Herkia. Opponents played Totem and Champion's Charge and a Stunning Blow, whereas we've just played bronze cards, right? We've developed our graveyard. Obviously, okay, we've invested our raiding fleet in our Giga Scorpion. Some pretty big investments, but I'd say, like, compared to the Totem, pretty much nothing. This card is really important in the mirror. And we've still got this Longship down on the board. Obviously, Scout only takes 5 removal to shut him down. But he's already played Champion's Charge. What ways does he really have of dealing 5 damage easily? Well, maybe Giga Scorpion, but it's a pretty good trade, really, Scout for Giga Scorpion. It's not the end of the world. Are we going to see the pass coming in from our opponent? We are. Look at that. So this is a really good lesson to learn from here. A lot of the time in Gwent, you can feel like, right, I'm just going to pass. But why? Try and just keep going. Like, your opponent is wanting you to pass in situations like that. So we got decent graveyard development. The invaders are only Herald target, and War of Clans therefore is... oh no, sorry. The invaders are War of Clans target, and the... So we're just looking at our graveyard. This is our Herald target. This is our War of Clans target, right? I think it's safe to say that we don't want this warrior in our hand, but obviously Jutta's like a free mulligan, so we'll mulligan her, and we'll mulligan the warrior. And we are just going to pass. There is some merit in suggesting that you could try and bleed, but I think the fact that we've got Totem and Last Say should give us like a pretty solid advantage in this matchup. Obviously, of course, like our opponent might be playing cards like the Ship, the Wild Boar, and Hemdall, which like they're massively favoured in this matchup if they have those cards. So there is an argument to try and like do a little bit of a bleed here. Maybe we might look back on this dry pass and regret that decision, but we'll see. I feel like with Last Say, the Sigdrift is look at these drawers. We're just drawing gold cards, and I actually think that this card's really nice for us to have as well. It's a nice control tool. Vabuon is going to be playing Stunning Blow, War of Clans. I've got access to Donna or Gremist from Blood Eagle. We've drawn perfectly, right? So if we lose, we lose. So Wang ID or Wangid was targeting the Skellige matchup in his tournament gameplay. Of course, you get to ban a deck, and he was banning Skellige every time he saw it. So maybe this is one of the worst matchups against the Patricidal Fury, but it's a really good matchup against decks like Skellige, like a Syndicate, Northern Realms, like a control-heavy decks. So the Invader comes in. This is perfect time for Herald. Obviously, we want to leave our option open for War of Clans, so we're going to play the Raiders, which is the better card to play anyway here. We could also just lead in with like an honest Totem. A bit of a decision to make. I'm not exactly sure which one's correct. I feel like having Herald plus like a Raider down is a little bit better at this point in the game. Something to look out for, that's something I don't always do, is you want to try and leave this Totem like free of space for a while, so you've got the option to flip it. It's maybe not as relevant in this matchup because you want them to like Hemdall the row of your Totem and stuff like that, because you're not going to trigger it until like right at the end, in the unlikely event that these cards haven't transformed. So I decided to go for Herald here just because this gives me a lot of control over his side of the board on engines and the such. Particularly when I've got Blood Eagle into Donna as my most likely play. Then comes Skjordal, again just a great card, no surprises there that he's going to come in and clean up. This could obviously be Giga Scorpion, so there's some merit in saying I could use this damage. I think I'm just going to play another one, honestly. Because this is just, I've got a lot of control now, right? So I could use this damage and then play this, but then this one dies, so I may as well just leave both floating. So then if my opponent doesn't have the Giga Scorpion, this suits us. It's also denying my opponent from setting up any engines of their own. It would suggest by their line of play that they don't have access to Herald just yet. And might be looking for like a Blood Eagle play. I think it's time for the totem. Not really anything else I want to do. I don't want to play any of my control cards. This is removal. This is playing a Stunning Blow or a War of Clans, which is all removal. Like, for instance, if I didn't have access to, like, Skjordal here, I could go Vabiorn into War of Clans, which would deal 2 on this villager. Just play this invader, and then next turn I could use Blood Eagle to play, like, Skjordal or Harald or Hjalmar, right? But I've just drawn all my cards. I'm pretty sure I'm just going to play Totem here. Leave this damage floating as well. No real reason not to, I don't think. It's just applying a lot of pressure on my opponent's side of the board. And this is the beauty of Harold, right? Even though he got answers straight away, he still put another... It's not an engine, but another control tool down on the board. And we're just denying our opponent from trying to set up any of their own engines. Obviously, they played this one Longship. They already played Herkia. No Harold from them yet, which again strongly suggests they're looking for Blood Eagle into Harold, which we're just gonna... They need a Death Blow or Bloodthirst 3. So we can sort of try and work out when that's going to happen. And Harold, probably something I should be looking at, is going to be playing this Warrior or this Raider. So definitely threatened by some of those cards. And look, this floating damage here just is going to allow me to clean up this Raider really easily. So I think I might honestly just leave this damage floating so I can just go Blood Eagle Vabiorn, right? Because it's going to have Bloodthirst 2. I don't, like, this can call in 7s. And this is what I'm saying about Donna and Scal being really good cards off Blood Eagle. I can actually go Blood Eagle into this Raider and then Donna. And what that allows me to do is it allows me to leave this floating damage on the board, which is much better, right? Like, this means I've got 4 damage on the board as of when I choose to have it, plus whatever else I have in my hand. So obviously I could go, like, ping, 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 kill this, but, like, it's much better to leave this floating, particularly when I've got 2 on the board. I'm not really bothered if this gets removed, right? It's probably time to start stacking this back row, but maybe it's not. I don't know. Because what they could do is kill this, and then I'm like, oh, I don't really want to use my totem. I'm basically relying on my opponent playing like a wild boar deck. Obviously, if they hemmed all the back, that could help as well, but I don't know, maybe I should just be stacking this back row. I'm honestly not sure on the correct way to play this one. In terms of just stacking the back row and maybe allowing them to remove this, but then their Hemdall's going to trigger this. Probably might be better to just stack the back row a little bit more than I'm currently doing. Okay, so this, I would imagine, is going to be his own Donna on probably this Raider here. But it could also be like Blood Eagle. Blood Eagle Donna onto this. So maybe I was supposed to use some of this damage. Maybe I was greeding out a little bit. But again, yeah, it makes the decision to remove one of my fanatics. Okay, I'm a little bit scared of War of Clans removing this Raider now, so I'm going to use this one here. Obviously, this is my like best leader target. Is there any merit in just leadering now? Probably. Skjordal, not doing much. Like, unless my opponent is like a very rare specimen and uses Hergvi, in theory this could just be my Sigdriffers, right? I don't really want to use any of my removal tools, right? I guess War of Clans is kind of fine. It's 2 removal, and it's a little bit safer, so... Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm supposed to use this damage as well. And what I'm just trying to sort of do is like bait that I've got Wild Boar or something of that nature with the Bloodthirst. I'm just a little bit scared of playing Jutta. Because Turgvi does exist. Jutta's like the best Turgvi target going, right? So realistically, I probably should just not be playing around that card though, because it doesn't really exist. So the Bloodthirst 3 is now in. And it seems like my opponent sort of delayed this quite significantly. Doesn't actually need to target one of these ones because he's got Bloodthirst 3, so that's a really odd play. And Harold finally comes in. This is my Skjordal. Just to shut Harold down, probably. But, I mean, there's also some merit in shutting down the Raider he's potentially playing, or they're potentially playing. It could be the Warrior as well, which is sort of why I decided to use this Raider here. It was pretty easily killable. There's no real reason to delay the leader either. Like, I could just leader this here. So, I mean, I can kill this, but I waste like a point of damage, or I could just kill Harold. I'm going for this line of play here. Just threaten this a little bit. I'd imagine the damage is used straight away. So, if we're just keeping track, even on points, 2 points of damage here. I've got 1 point on my Fanatic. Obviously, Warboar plus Hemdall. You'd expect the deck that has those cards to win. But a very weak... Is this still going to be floated? It is. So I think actually my decision to damage this was incorrect, right? Because this would have been my best Yama. Okay, it's used. Okay, I feel like it's fine to just go for... I'm expecting Hemdall last card here. So I feel like it's fine to just go for my Sigdrift. So I'm going to use my Blaze now. Like, okay, if my opponent's using Turgvi, would I lose? I'm pretty sure we'd still win, right? So Turgvi would come in at 5. Yeah, I still beat Turgvi. And go front row to minimize Hemdall value. And then obviously I've got Hjalmar on Skjal. Remove Hemdall. Assuming it's Hemdall. Could of course be Wild Boar, but pretty sure it's Morkvarg. So that's yeah, a pretty easy victory. No need to play this Harold, this Hjalmar here, but it would have played for what? 8 points. So pretty yeah, convincing win, it has to be said. Of course, my opponent didn't have anything like Hemdall or Wild Boar. As you can see, he did tank my MMR quite a bit, but I'm pretty sure we can push this quite high. But that's not like your ideal matchup. Like, more ideal matchups for this deck are probably looking at things such as maybe Syndicate with engines, maybe Northern Realms. But you saw, like, if we could win round 1 and have last save, the round 1 was what was most important in that game. As soon as we got to round 3, it was sort of done, right? Unfortunately, up against more Skellige, which... yeah, kind of sucks, because obviously I wanted to show you a different matchup. That's kind of annoying. But we're going second this time, at least, so it's definitely not exactly the same. Again, in terms of hands, really just need to be careful of how awkward your hands can be with this deck. I think I might keep Scale going second. I think this War of Clans is just super dodgy, honestly. I don't want to brick my raiding fleet. Honestly, these removal tools are pretty nice. I think I'm just going to kick Skjordal. Like, I never play this card round 1, and I kind of want to push this round quite deep. There's so many awkward cards in this deck. Like, kicking Skjordal feels really awkward, but I don't feel like you have to. So opponent leads in with a Raider, which is, you know, not the most common of ways of leading in, but it makes sense, right? It's that floating damage. I'm just going to go... I mean, I could also just go Raiding Fleet, right? I think Raiding Fleet's probably more reasonable. So Raiding Fleet's always been amazing, but now you can tutor it with Vabion. I've obviously got the Blood Eagle. If I didn't have Blood Eagle, I wouldn't be making that play. You want to just make sure you've got access to Blood Eagle, because obviously it's an Echo card. But since I've already got my Blood Eagle here, no surprises this gets Stunning Blowed. I'm just going to play my next one here. Of course, if this one gets Stunning Blowed, there's some merit in maybe playing Herkia to and not using the order on her straight away and just trying to leave her for a little while. We'll see. Of course, Skellige normally has lots of removal options, and of course this floating damage, a little bit scary, but there's no threat of anything like War of Clans in round 1. And again, we just want to be sort of trying to develop our graveyard. Like, you'll notice an instant issue is our lack of bronze warriors. So yeah, Vabiorn, allowing Vabiorn to come in. So this is probably the second stunning blow. It's actually a raiding fleet. I'm just going to go for the stunning blow of my own. Onto this long ship still. Probably just worth removing. Remis is quite tempting as well. But we'll see how this one goes. Honestly, not really sure how this one's going to pan out. I mean, this card is really tempting to remove with like Blood Eagle. Blood Eagle Donna would remove this. It'd actually remove this as well. I think I'd take the decoction here. 5-point decoction, but it's removing basically a 7-point, right? And like we're in a pretty strong position here. Like we don't really have much for our opponent to target us with. Obviously, like if you look at my hand, lots of removal cards in Skellige, as you can see. But our opponent doesn't really have much to target. So Longship is a rip. No point of trying to keep this alive, I would say. I could go for Donar here. Probably the best player, right? Obviously, I could call in something like a Skjordal, but I don't really want any of these cards around 1, unfortunately. So I think we just go for Donar. So I could call some of these in, but we'll just stick with Donar. There's Bloodthirst 2 on the board, which means I'm going to deal 4 damage. And again, Donar and Scow, I'd say you always want one of those in your hand. So Mulligan's... Oh, Davinson follows and I'm not live. That's kind of mad. Thanks, Davinson, if you're watching. But having access to either Donar or Scow off Blood Eagle, super important is what I've been noticing the more I've been playing Skellige this last few weeks, really. And yeah, Scow, just a nice card to have in hand, I think, when you're going second. So Donar makes a lot of sense in that sense. Because I can just put this down and look, we're 4 points ahead on even. Opponent's in a pretty bad spot now. Investing Champion's Charge into that just cannot feel good for my opponent. I could go for Herkia here. Still the threat of another stunning blow. I feel like this is a pretty nice card to put down as well. As I'm still sort of tempted to just use Herkia with the 3 damage. I am running out of cards to play this round. I guess Galmar is still like a 10-point card potentially. If he puts down something we really want to remove, or they put down something they really want to remove. Bad habit of referring to my opponent as he, as I said before. But we're just looking in a really strong position here. I'm not exactly sure how this one happened, but like my opponent's investing cards like Hemdall now. Can't feel good if you're my opponent. So I think I'm fine to just go Herkia here. I've only got 5 removal in the graveyard, right? So I could then deal this, eats me ahead, and I could go Hjalmar on this Hemdall. I just want to, if I win this round on even cards, that means I'm going to have double last say, which is just amazing, honestly. So Gutting Slash comes in. Pretty weak play. I'm going to go for the Scowl here, and then if Scowl's answered, it gives me even more removal. I'd much rather save this Hjalmar, but my opponent's got 2 cards left. And I would imagine their hand's starting to look something like mine with like a Harold. Obviously, they've already played this Hemdall. And we actually secure the round win while keeping our best 2 gold cards. So, like, pretty fantastic. You can just see the power of the raiding fleet. Obviously, going second just made things a little bit awkward for our opponent, not giving them good targets to remove at any point. Like, I don't think I ever really had engines down apart from this Longship, which they bled, which meant it was on the board for a long period of time. Any argument in pushing? Probably not, I would say. Removal cards are actually really nice in this matchup as well, for dealing with ships and things of that nature. Herkia as well. I've got 1 bronze. I'm only really looking for Skjordal, and of course I do have the Blood Eagle as well, but Totem and Sigdriffer. So even though this card's really good, both these cards are good. I actually value my Stunning Blow quite highly in this one. Because, like, let's say they make a first play with, like, a Herkia, right? Then I Stunning Blow and I've still got no cards on the board. And just, if you didn't know, the value in Uninteractivity is very good. Watch my man Spyro's video. It'll be in the description. The value of uninteractivity. That word? Uninteractivity. I think it is. Like, not giving your opponent anything to target. Like, if you look at my hand, lots of it's removal based. So if I've got no cards on my side of the board, that's just annoying for my opponent. So we don't want to find Jutta. Howden's Grimmist. Kind of bad, but maybe they've got a sneaky defender. We don't want to draw into Jutta, right? That would be kind of game losing. I'd love this totem, but we're just going to stop here, I think. We could risk it to 1 in 6, but this is kind of bad. All this is decent. Actually, War of Clans is also terrible, right? Yeah. So I've got 2 really bad cards. So just be really careful with your mulligans, because this is my Herald and War of Clans target, right? So let's just keep this exact hand. We found the Sigdriffers, right, which is what we were mainly looking for. Totem would have been great too, has to be said. So I've obviously got the Blood Eagle as well to play something. And I do actually like this opening play by my opponent. Not giving me a good target. Couple of options. I think floating damage we've seen already is a nice option to have. I could obviously go for the Blood Eagle, but it's important to remember Blood Eagle is also damage, so I don't really need the damage. Obviously Harold's a logical first play though, so let's do that. Let's just lead him with Harold. My opponent's decision not to lead him with Harold maybe suggests that they don't have him, but that's not necessarily true, right? And then we want to get this floating damage down on the board as well. Probably going to be my Blood Eagle target as well. The Skjordal answers Harold. No surprises there. I'm really glad Harold's 5 base power. I think it was such a good decision. Makes him so much more balanced. Because if you imagine I played a Raider, I'd still have, like, not an engine, but a threatening card. Obviously, no real reason to play around Hemdall anymore, but I guess I'm still doing it. So 2 points ahead with an extra card. Of course, my leader sort of answers their leader pretty significantly. Harold comes in. This is just going to be my the score of my own. I mean, there's also an argument I could just target this Raider though, right? And then get Harold next turn. I think I'm going to do that. So this is 2 damage, whereas Harold is going to be 1 damage before I answer him. So let's actually get some value off this stunning blow. And then I'll go Skjordal next. Herky comes in. Interesting decision. I mean, I'm actually going to go for Herky here. Okay. Maybe I should have just killed Harold straight away. I don't know. I've got a very damaged side of the board now, so Wild Boar's going to get an awful lot of value, has to be said. How scared are we, though? Probably not that scared. I guess I just take my Grimmist here. I mean, do I, though? Like, if I'm expecting Wild Boar, which his deck looks very Wild Boar-y, right? With ships. Maybe I just Hjalmar the Herald. Wild Boar and 1 other card. Is that a rage quit? Surely it's not a rage quit. It could be a rage quit. Especially if they miss the boar. That would explain a lot. I was taking a while over my plays. I opened 2 cards to the good. They don't have Wild Boar. Because you can't shoot a Wild Boar, of course. Could be an easy rage quit. Uh-oh. My connection has actually dropped. My internet has just died. Wow. Well, that is pretty devastating, isn't it? Yep, my internet's just died. Guys, I'll be honest as well, yeah? Like, I've just spent 40 minutes filming this video. I've already said, like, I've been feeling a bit on the downside. Not sure I really want to record another game, so I might call it there, because I was going to film another video. But that seems like an absolutely disgraceful way to end a video, doesn't it, really? So we'll play another one. Jeez. Hopefully my internet gets itself fixed nice and quickly. Got a bit of rain here. Nothing too major though. It's quite rare for my internet to cut out. Looks like we might have to call it there because it's still not back on. Alright guys, we were going to win that game. Oh, that's devastating though, right? I'm so sorry to end it that way. But I did want to film another video. And I've got an eye test soon. I might be wearing glasses next time you see me. So, yeah. Thank you for watching the video. So sorry it ended that way. But, obviously, you can definitely see the deck's pretty good. And hopefully my explanations about some of the different plays you might want to consider making. Guys, what decks would you like me to bring to you? Obviously, Shiru is all over the ladder now. So I could bring you some more Shiru decks. I've played, like, more Shiru than anyone, right? So, I could tell you sort of the advantages and disadvantages of various different Shiru decks. If you'd like to see some monsters, some Nilfgaard, some Skellige, like some Patricidal Fury, I could bring all those sorts of things to you. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Really sorry to end the video on a disconnect. That feels pretty awful, but hopefully you can understand, like, filming a video for 40 minutes is kind of like a big investment of time. So yeah, thank you for watching. We were definitely going to win that game. Like, we had it in the bag. Leader was worth 11 points. I had the Sigdriff as right, which was worth 12. Galmar was going to be worth like 8 points. We were going to win that one, I'm pretty sure. But never mind. Can't win them all, I guess. Thanks for watching. Again, that matchup we saw is probably one of the worst ones, like Patricidal Fury. And we managed to win the first game and win the second game on even before the disconnect. So, yeah, deck's really good. Definitely quite high skill cap in terms of mulligans. I think that's going to be something. And just making sure you've got your graveyard developed and also your Blood Eagle set up and you're not bricking your hand. So lots of things to consider in the mulligan phase for sure. So really try and concentrate on your mulligans with that deck. It's going to be really important. And just constantly check, right, what's my graveyard looking like? Do I have my graveyard set up? Are any of these cards going to be detrimental in round one, because you're going to want to often push round one, like you saw in that first game. I pushed round one quite deep. Imagine if I had like Jutta, War of Clans, Harold, all those sorts of cards in my hand. So maybe you might even want to begin to consider mulliganing cards like Harold if you've got like an amazing hand. Maybe like a Kialma, you might want to mulligan round one, because you've always got access to it off Blood Eagle. You can set it up somewhat easily with this deck for sure. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. What decks would you like me to like bring to you soon? Yeah, nice one. See ya.